Today we'll be talking about Wargame AirLand Battle, a fantastic game who's getting another addition to the Wargame series, Q2 2014. The reason I made this tutorial is because a lot of people get discouraged by this game. You buy it. You're a big strategy fan. You play Command and Conquer a lot. You think you know nuances. This game is all nuances. It's not easy. Difficulty curve is not fun to climb, but once you get up there where you can play it, it's a lot more challenging, a lot more rewarding, and just generally a better game to play than some of the mainstream strategy games. I do like strategy games. I have 25% of my Steam library. The games have war in the title because they're all strategy games and they're so original with their names. Funny thing about the title of this game, all of it's like simple words, which I kind of like. There's no like war in the East or blah blah blah. It's like Wargame, AirLand Battle. A lot of people hate it, love it. Today we're going to be talking about NATO. And everybody plays NATO. Every game I go into, everyone has a NATO deck because most of the people who play it are in NATO countries. So, I mean, can you really blame them? We're going to go over to deck, and we're going to make a new NATO deck. I'm going to name it I doubt I'll use this deck in outside the show. Now, to select your bonuses, this is a very important part of the game. A lot of people don't see it as important, but playing with friends, it's very, very, very important that our bonuses help each other out, because a lot of my friends are very fast attack oriented and I'm armored oriented, so I play defensively, but not going to go into that yet. National deck. It's very important here to play what you know first off starting the game. A lot of people know the U.S.'s military units, so we're going to go with the U.S. I know the U.S.'s military units very well because I live in the United States. I'm also a big Cold War buff. Type. But this is where your play style comes into. Now, for the sake of not excluding anything, I'm not going to choose a bonus this time around. But brief overview: motorized, less tanks, more recon, more aircraft. Armored, more tanks, less infantry. Air assault, more helicopters, less support units like artillery and AAA. Marines, more infantry, more planes, well, better planes, better infantry, as well as less recon. Mechanized, more vehicle, more support, less helicopters. Vehicles are like, and you'll see what vehicles are here in a minute. And para, more infantry, less support. Fast attack oriented. But we're not going to have a bonus this time, just because I want to touch on the strengths and weaknesses of each unit type. And era, this is where you choose the level of units you're going to have on the board, as well as the challenge that you're going to face when going up against enemies. Because if you go pre-1975, you're going to have a load of units on the table, but they're not going to be advanced. Very basic units. You could Zerg rush occasionally, not always a viable option in this game. And then for Category B, you're going to have like a mid-range of units, but you're going to only have things that were made before 1980. And if you'll see, we can't get the prototype units because there's only like one prototype unit pre-1980. So we're going to ignore that. We're going to create our deck. Now here's your basic deck building scheme. Everything starts with logistics. You're going to need units to capture, you're going to need units to resupply, and you're going to need a forward operating base if you so choose to play like me. If you're a fast attack type, you can ignore the forward operating base simply because you're going to be moving a lot. Now, I always have two types of capture vehicle. I have one for cool zones, which are closer to my base, and one for hot zones, which are close to the enemy's base. One's tough, one's not. Easy enough. If you're a fast attack type, you're gonna go with the UH-1A ACP. Fantastic command unit. I've never had problems with it. Not very. Yeah, of course it's weak because it's got no armor, no weapons either. But if you play smart, that won't be a problem. And we're gonna go with a forward operating base just to keep my anti-air batteries as well as my artillery online. Now we need resupply bases. Resupply units. The Hemet, great choice. M35, also a great choice. Super Chinook, not going to use him because I'm not going to have that much of a moving front line. Now here's where knowing your country's units come into play. I'm going to go with just a good all-around unit. Just all-around infantry, because there's not really a point in having specialized infantry all day long because of just the sheer amount of stuff that goes wrong in this game. Now, you have to choose between the red-eye missiles and the Stinger missiles, and what you're looking at are the numbers over here. So the Stinger has 2275, 1820. This is 2275, 1820. So for the US, you don't really have to choose. So we're going to go with a red eye, and we're going to stick them in an IFV so that it can take an absolute whaling from whatever spots it, because the Russian recon units like to have weapons. So if this thing gets spotted by an aircraft, it's going to want to take it out, and we're going to want to make sure that it can fight back. And it can, because it's got the Bushmaster and the tow missile if it encounters anything. And, the symbol anti-helicopter, or anti-air. Now, we have to choose between light riflemen, regular riflemen, and rounds. Riflemen come with M72s, M61s, light riflemen come with the Dragon, the M240, and the M16A1. So, basically, these guys are a slightly better version of the regular rifle. And then we have the U.S. Marines, which have the M16 and M16A1. I'm going to ignore the fact that these are better range-wise, as well as CQC weapon-wise, because they can only come in Humvees or M35s or helicopters. Don't forget the helicopters. I don't use helicopters as much as other people do. AAA bitch in this game. Especially if it's not yours. We're going to stick them in Lab 25. So that they have a fighting chance against other infantry that are trying to basically make their lives not fun. Oh, and these transport units, once they disembark and set in, these transport units become basically whatever their strengths are. That's what they become. They become anti-infantry or just anti-infantry, really. There are no anti-tank IFVs, to my knowledge. Oh, here we have some SMAs. But they don't have CQC weapons, so if someone's trying to take the city from me, they can't engage there. It's that well. Now we're going to go for our anti-tank. We appear to not have any anti-tank. This will be problematic. Oh, nope. SMAs. So these guys are the anti-tank. I've completely and totally screwed that up. Stick them in a Lab 25. Have 6 guys, one guy has a rocket launcher, just in case things get hairy and a tank decides to go inside a city, which rarely happens in multiplayer, because cities are death traps, thanks to tactics like mine. And now we're going to go for the psychological warfare kind of guys that flush out other troops. We don't need Delta Force. Delta Force are just kind of cool to have around, but 90% of the time you're not facing just infantry, so I mean, if you have them, that's cool. If you don't, that's nice. We'll wait till the end of the activation points are filled. If we have 1 point left, I mean. We're gonna stick these guys on an M113A3 because that is the highest level of anything that they can get into. So we'll do that. And these guys, use them to clear cities before you invade, or to clear a bush, or to clear a tree line, or anything flammable. Just use them to fire at that, and then move in after the fire has died. Because if the enemy has 30 riflemen, they're gonna burn to death. That's 30 riflemen that they've just wasted. Support. Very useful. You have your mortar IFVs. Not much to say about these guys. I don't know how to use them, because every time I use them, yeah, I get the infantry, but whatever's in that mess also kills that. So now here's a nice little unit. It's a cheap infrared missile launcher. I guess we'll go with that. We always need infrared missiles and radar missiles, because the radar missiles can be targeted by aircraft that use anti-radar technology. So you may get the aircraft, but you may lose that. So you're gonna want infrared missiles. They're not as great, but they're great to fall back on. Now we're gonna need some artillery. I usually go with the biggest, ugliest, most accurate piece of equipment that I can get. So the M110A2 is what we're going with. Fires only 1 round a minute, but it can be used to flatten an AA battery, as well as several cheaper units. They can fire slightly faster if I have them. No paladins. Really good. Now here's the first example of experimental unit is the M270 MLRS. Great unit, area suppression. What more can you say? You fire and forget. If there's infantry in a city, you fire it at the city, a good half the infantry will die. So why not have it? Tanks. This is where my offensive line comes from. Simply because there are 2 tanks in the NATO and the U.S. arsenal that are uncompromisingly good. That's the M11P Abrams and the M1A1 Abrams. Super good armor. Top armor, no tank has good top armor. Decent back armor. But that's 17. Most tanks can't even get through that. It's inefficient, is what the game says. If you want to fire upon one of these, it says inefficient. And we're going to have some cheaper tanks. This is another experimental tank, the MPD-70. I always have that. That's my cheap tank of the Americans. And let's throw a M1 Abrams, just so we can have like a backbone. Recon, very important, especially if you play NATO, because PAC likes to hide everything in bushes. These guys are going to want to be tough and fast. 150. You go with this guy, just in case there's infantry hiding in bushes that he can't see. And we're going to go with a cheap, multi-use aircraft that's not going to attack anything. Now, Russians, they have a Hind, I believe, that can attack. It's basically an attack helicopter with a recon stats. You know, it'll take out a tank or 2 or a whole column of infantry. That happened to me once. I hated that. But generally speaking, recon's not going to be your attack units. Common sense kind of thing. Vehicles. Now, here's like the oddball units of the game, like tank destroyers. Tank destroyers are good for defensive, so we're going to have one of those. The Ontos is very good for like setting up a perimeter. Just because it's recoilless rifle technology, so it fires a lot, and if the enemy attempts a Zerg rush, then it just kills tanks. That's all it's used for. M63 CS, also a good defensive line. But this one's different from the Pivods. Did I get the Pivods? I did not get the Pivods. I'm dumb. I don't want the Pivods. Because it is all anti-air all the time. If everything else fails, Pivods does it. And M163 CS, if you have infantry advancing, it's a good thing. It's basically a heavy machine gun nest with wheels. Helicopters, personal favorite. All of Cobras. Generally speaking, your helicopters are going to be your high-end units that you're going to send in to mop up at the end of a game. So we're going to want good ones that aren't going to fall easily. Super Cobras, go wild, throw an Apache in there. And some cheap units, such as this one, because this one only takes out infantry. The UH-1C Heavy Hog only centered up against infantry. Need a building cleared? Heavy Hog. Need a city cleared? Heavy Hog. Without burning it down and destroying your cover? Heavy Hog. Planes. The U.S. has some of the best planes in the game. We need to choose intelligently here. The F-117 Nighthawk is quite possibly the best fire and forget anti-tank solution for the United States. Just because of that exceptional stealth, because most radar and infrared won't even fire on it. Well, until it fires, but you should have queued it up so that it was leaving as it was firing. We need something that can deal with our to attack our other friends, but they come in airplanes, so we're going to go with the F-16C. Actually, we may not go with the F-16C. Where is it? It's not the F-16C, it's the F-15C. Send in one of these guys. Alright, here's our basic layout. Filled all of our activation points. It's very important. And we will take these into battle against the AI twice next episode. It's going to be significantly longer. One with AI help and one without AI help. And I'm going to show you basically what each unit does.